Welcome to Ear Biscuits. I'm Link.
And I'm Rhett. This week at the round table of dim lighting, we are exploring the question, what are our top 10 memories of 2018?
And given that we have not shared these with each other, the corollary question is, and how many of them overlap? What if there's a 100% overlap? I would say a lot about our relationships with our family.
100% sure that there is not a 100% overlap.
Because you've looked at my,
Hold on.
You haven't looked at my list, have you?
If our list matches 100%, I will eat both of our lists and your jean jacket. Right now, I will eat the whole thing.
And this is a
in
fluffy
one
jean jacket.
sitting.
And
you heard it here. Now there's a teaser.
Plus our wives and kids will probably be upset that
considering
all of our top moments had to do with just each other.
Well, because that
ain't gonna happen.
A good percentage of mine are just personal. So if those were your favorite memories,
right,
then we've got something to talk about.
And mine skew personal too, and I think
that's good. That's healthy.
I think that is healthy. Well, let's decide at the end, but it is appropriate that we're having this conversation now because this is the last Ear Biscuit of 2018, and that's when the top lists happen. You know, that's just when it happens. If we did this in January,
for the first time ever, yeah.
We talked about it, just waiting to do it for a January episode, but I was like, man, it's too late. That's the future.
People don't care about 2018 at that point.
We're future forward. So see how many of these. I think you've heard some tidbits of some of these stories, but
yeah,
and moments, but maybe not.
So this is the last episode of 2018, like Link said, and just a quick reminder. So the first episode will be on January 7th. That's when the 2019 season starts, January 7th. But also, starting in 2019, all the video Ear Biscuits will be on their own YouTube channel, youtube.com/earbiscuits. It's not just gonna be the new ones, but it's going to be all the old ones, the whole catalog of ones that we have video for, and then the ones that we don't have video for, we're gonna just put them up there as audio with a picture, right?
Yep, just so you can keep, we have them all in the same repository. So you can go over there right now and subscribe to that YouTube channel, youtube.com/earbiscuits. If you wanna watch us talk, as opposed to just listen to us talk, the audio will still come out roughly a week before the video version.
Yes.
In the new year. So that's how things are gonna work. So I have my list. You have not cheated and looked at my list. Yours is folded up. So
I could, if I could read that, I could.
You can't read that far?
No, I can, but I have to really squint.
Don't do it.
I need glasses. That's another thing that might happen in 2019. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Already.
Branding problem.
Already got problems. So what I suggest we do is that we alternate presenting our 10th and then go down. I think we're already thinking the same thing. And then maybe one on my list will be one of yours that's higher ranking on your list. You can go ahead and mention it at that time.
Right, if reference, go ahead and mention yours.
Get it out of the way. But you know what, I wanna go ahead and skip to one in an effort to just make a shameless plug of ours. I would like to go ahead and, spoiler alert, skip to half of my number 7, okay?
Okay.
So half of my number 7.
You got two-parters?
There's a couple of two-parters.
I think I might have a two-parter.
One of the top, my 7th top moment of 2018 happened in November when it was our last Tour of Mythicality show. We were on the stage performing it, and I remember, at the beginning we each have like a monologue that we say, and like the light's up on me and it's down on you, and then the light comes up on you and I'm standing there and I get to hear you talk about the start of our friendship. Like when we first met, our first impressions of each other. And I remember making a conscious decision, this is the last one. We're on stage in front of one of the largest crowds we've ever done this show to. In fact, wasn't it the largest crowd? No, it was one of them.
It was the largest crowd.
Yeah, it was. Foxwoods.
Like 4,000.
And I just made up my mind, I'm gonna savor this moment. That's the last show we do, and that was it. That's a mental picture I have when I'm looking, just like I'm looking at you now, I'm looking across the stage. You're doing the last rendition of this show that we worked so hard on and that we took to Australia, and then we took around the US before that, and then we did a couple more spots, and then that wrapped it up. So that was a big moment.
Yes.
in our career, just kind of coalescing something that we will never do again, that you can never see if you didn't get a ticket. I'm sorry, there's no way to see it.
Oh, this is a good setup.
The Tour of Mythicality stage show where we encapsulated lots of our book of Mythicality in stage and dramatic form.
Or
you could never see it.
Is there a way to see it? Yes, there is a way to see it, because when we did the show in Los Angeles at the Wiltern, we actually filmed it. Yes, so we have produced our own special, the Tour of Mythicality special, that you can go and get. You can pre-order right now on iTunes. And you don't just get the special, you also get a documentary that we created that documented our travels while we were on the road, and also kind of some of our perspective about the tour and that kind of thing.
Yeah, if you remember our Instagram stories from the tour, fall of 2017, you would see in a lot of those that one of us was also holding a camera, because we documented some of those stuff ourselves, and then we had some help in documenting some things. So it's a lot of prep, a lot of creative hand-wringing, behind-the-scenes stuff, and I think you'll really enjoy the documentary just as much as the show itself, maybe.
Yeah, so you can pre-order that on iTunes, but, so again, that's the tour and the tour documentary together on iTunes. However, you can also on iTunes, or wherever music is available, right? Most places, you can get the tour album, the live album. So all the songs that we performed live, and a studio version of the song that we close every single show with, the Best Friends Till the End song. We recorded a studio version of that in this room right here. We recorded that, because this is also our recording studio. So you can get that album as well. Is that album available for pre-order, or is that album just good to go now? When
only available for pre-order.
So okay, it's all
pre-order, all of it.
Yeah. Just buy it blindly, basically, is what pre-order is all about. Just buy it based on trust.
Just trust us.
Yeah.
Just trust us.
It's a great exercise.
Speaking of exercise, I'm glad that we did this exercise. You know, there's a little bit of homework involved, actually a lot. I don't know how you went about this. Did you just sit in a meditative state and reflect?
Well, I sat down and I was like, I started to think, and then I was like, I have a horrible, we actually are known for having a good memory in terms of like being able to access things from our childhood, like for the book and that kind of thing, but that was because those are stories that we've told multiple times and we've re-accessed. But when I think about just my past year, I was like, what am I gonna do? And then I was like, oh, photos on my camera.
That's exactly what I did too.
I think that's what most rational people would choose to do.
I
was glad that, and then I was like, well, what things did I experience that I didn't take photos for? And then I was able to, then I looked at our calendar.
Then I looked at the calendar.
Yeah.
And then the third thing I looked at
was the tattoos of all the things that we did that you have on your back that you're gonna reveal right now. No?
My digital journal, or my note-taking digital space. I wouldn't really call it a journal, but I do journal some thoughts that I have there, and there's dates associated, and that jogged a few memories. So
I didn't get to that.
Those three things put it together. And then I did it by month just so I would have a list, and that became a journal entry now that I want to do every year, which is like at the end of the year, a bi-month highlight. And then I was like, I'm not gonna rank these because I don't want to show favoritism to any of moments from my life. I just want to be able to enjoy each moment as if it were the best. And then I told you that right before we did this, and you said, that's a bad idea, you should rank these.
Yeah.
Nobody wants a top 10 list that's not ranked.
Yeah, you gotta rank it. It's 2018,
that's
man.
That's a pretty good point,
It's
Rhett.
2018 for just a little bit longer.
So I have ranked my list.
And I did, and it was not easy to rank. And also, I think I can tell by looking at yours over there that you had some honorable mentions. I also had some honorable mentions that I was like, these got shifted off as I sifted through the memories.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll skip those, and then maybe something that happened to me was in your honorable mention, or vice versa. So, do you want to go ahead and start with number 10?
Yeah.
Before we go into our ad break.
Start with your number 10. So the least special moment of 2018 amongst the most special moments of 2018 for you was what?
That's an uncharitable way to put it. Was when we went around town with our good friend Mike Edwards
Oh.
to find the best al pastor taco in Los Angeles. That is something that we documented on the Rhett and Link Instagram. And it was one of those things where Mike said we talked about it a little bit, but Mike said he was coming into town. He said, we gotta go back to that place to get tacos.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, what if we just went all around the whole town and found the best ones and documented the whole thing?
Do you remember when this was? What month this was? Because I need to add this to my list.
It was
to my digital journal.
It was pretty early. It was January or February.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, it was pretty early in the year. And the thing that, first of all, I find that, and I've talked about this a little bit, I really like creating experiences. Like that's one of the reasons that we do the game night. Isn't just because I'm selfishly want to play games and experience those people, but I really like creating an experience.
You like being a ringmaster?
And then like being like, all right, let's just do this thing all together and see what happens.
Well, and I think that the Instagram makes part of the experience.
Yeah, well, adding a little bit of structure, that's why I always like a competition. That's why if you're all gonna get together, somebody should win something. You know.
I liked it because we weren't competing, but there was a competition. That's the sweet spot for me.
Yeah.
We were like, and then Mike was really cool and gracious to actually be excited about the fact that it was on our Instagram versus, guys, I'm coming into town. I see you a couple of times a year. You guys gonna Instagram this whole thing? No, he loved it, which was really cool.
He likes to eat quite a bit, so you just stick a taco in his mouth and he'll be happy about anything.
But he wasn't unhappy about the Instagram
No,
part.
he wasn't.
Yeah,
So
that was
number 10.
That was a good moment. I totally forgotten about. Cause
yeah,
I didn't
actually have Instagram. You don't go on Instagram.
I didn't look. Did you look at Instagram for your photos? Because I didn't look there.
I just had a bunch of. I had all the videos that we created that night.
You did
as part of my photo album.
Oh, okay. Is that how it works?
I think if you save them, you can save them to your. I don't know how it works, but yeah, I saw it on there. Maybe I just saw pictures. I'm old.
My number 10 doesn't involve you. Sorry.
Okay.
Doesn't involve our friend Mike. It doesn't involve tacos. It doesn't involve
anybody but you.
Anybody but me. That's right. In September, I might have mentioned this to you, but I don't think I told anybody else. I decided, like looking out from my house, I can see a mountain in the distance. I might have mentioned this on here, but I'm gonna go up there. And I had been up there once and I didn't make it all the way for time constraints, not for like physical constraints because I'm a specimen.
Oh gosh.
No, I made up my mind, you know what, that was over a year ago, I'm gonna do that again. I'm gonna get up at the butt crack of dawn and so I can get back at a reasonable time and not spoil my whole Saturday. Be a little family man too. And I took a hike all the way up to that mountaintop and it ended up being like a 6-hour hike. And I had this playlist, this like instrumental playlist that I put on my earbuds right at the beginning. And it turned out, like I listened to it the whole way up and the whole way down, and the way that the playlist timed out to end as I was ending my hike. It was like a magical experience, like a magical moment of.
Were you referencing the time and
completion, like walking slow or walking faster?
Down?
No, I even took a wrong turn and had to backtrack like a quarter of a mile almost. And it was still, and that was fate saying, I want this Spotify reflection playlist to end at just the right time. And so, and it was the most grueling hike I've ever done in like, I don't know, since that time I went to Yosemite just out of college.
Really?
Yeah, which says more about me than the hike.
Does it get very steep?
Well, it says
it's very long.
It says more about me. But it was an exercise in solitude that honestly replaced on my list me going to Slab City, which is another exercise in solitude, which I'll just honorably mention, and because I knew I had already talked to you guys, and maybe that also about it. Maybe that kind of pushed it off my list because I didn't want to share it, which is not a good way to make a list for me.
Oh yeah.
If I'm making it for you.
You can't think about that.
But they're similar things, but the reason why I ranked this one a little bit higher was because it's much more accessible for me to do again, and something that's like, it engenders a higher likelihood of an exercise in solitude, just like a half-day hike versus like a 2-day trip. I feel like I can go out there and do that again, you know? So that's why it was a bigger moment, especially with the playlist.
Now you could do it,
so that was it.
Even more often. If every time I take a hike and I get to the top of a mountain,
yeah,
I'm like, man, I wish there was a zip line. You know what I'm saying? You get up there and you're like, I gotta go back down the same daggum trail and it's gonna hurt my knees.
If we were in middle school,
why didn't they put a zip line?
We would be constructing a zip line now in order to realize
What do you think
this.
it would cost? And how much pushback would we get from like the county if we if we like put a zip line in just without asking from the peak of that mountain behind your house to your house?
Oh, to my house.
All the way to the back.
Well, that would generate a lot of hiker traffic at my house with everyone coming. I don't want a zip line to terminate at my house.
Yeah, good point.
Well, I mean, there was a project.
How about your neighbor's house?
Proposed to put not a zip line, but one of those ski trolley things, is big friggin', to do one of those to and from the Hollywood side. And it's still being considered in some circles.
A gondola.
A gondola. It's different.
Oh, okay.
So that's my number 10.
Okay, well, we've got a lot more to go, and we're gonna get to that in just a second, but first we wanna let you know that we've got headwear.
Oh, yeah.
Headwear at mythical.store. Link is putting on the headwear right now.
Gotta take my cans off first.
These are new options. This is I would call that tan.
I kind of like.
Is that a 6-panel?
Like
what do you call that? It's 5-panel? Dad hat? Unstructured dad hat. And because that's what the kids are ironically
looks
into
even better
today.
if you're not a dad.
Yeah,
so if you don't like it on me, you'll love it on yourself. If you like it on me, you'll also like it on yourself.
You got the Mythical logo featuring the Rambler. It has a leather strap.
Yeah.
What's
Why
that?
are you pointing at your hand?
I'm trying to get you to take it off and show the inside.
Show the inside.
Well, that certainly wasn't clear.
Look, it says.
Tell them about my hand.
It says Mythical all along the inside. Look at that.
Leather strap.
And if that's not warm enough for you, we have a beanie. Bringing back the beanies. This one's black. It says Mythical, super mythical. This is great for robbing homes.
It doesn't have eye holes. It's not a rubber mask. It's just a beanie, dude.
No, it looks like what Pesci had on in Home Alone. He didn't cover his face because he was Pesci. You know what I'm saying? But no, he had it exactly the way you had it before. Back up on top. That's the Pesci look. Rolled, but his didn't say Mythical.
You don't have to. Oh, when you unroll it, it also says.
It says Mythical both ways. You can't get away from it. You can't get away from the branding on this one.
When you do that, but
anyway, Mythical.store.
We're not giving notes on our merch. We're just trying to sell it.
Mythical.store headwear galore.
All right. Oh, leave that there, Kiko. I get to fix my hair. Yeah, nice.
Push that hat out a little bit more. A little bit more.
What am I looking for?
Yeah, just throw it on the ground. Who cares about it? It's just a hat.
All right, let's get into your number 9, I believe we're at.
And you know what we should probably do? Well, let's just keep going back and forth for now.
Okay, yeah.
Because okay, so my suspicion, just based on your first one, is that you're gonna be a little bit more of a specific, this is the time I was looking at you and this kind of thing. And just the way my brain works, it's gonna be a little bit more general, but then I have some specificity within the generality.
I'll accept it.
So number 9 for me is the fact that I kind of discovered skiing with my family.
Yes.
As a thing.
That was in January. Right at the top of the year.
Yeah, so we went to Big Bear, our families went together, and then I ended up going back again with my boys one time after that, and then I ended up going with my family to Mammoth, which was like next level in terms of the amount of skiing that there is available and the amount of snow and just the quality of it. And now we're planning a trip. That's what we're gonna do for their spring break, is we're going skiing. But I really like it as a sport. It's a little. I feel like there's danger involved, and I could run into a tree at any point. But I don't really go that fast. I could also just fall at any point.
Please don't run into a tree.
I don't go that fast. I take it pretty easy. I don't go into crazy places. I don't leave this course or whatever they call it, the trail. But I enjoy it a lot personally, but I enjoy doing that kind of thing with my boys a bunch. Jessie, she's not so much into it. She did it and she learned how to ski basically, and then she's totally fine with us going as a family to do it over spring break, but she's like, I'm gonna read a lot.
She's a lodger.
Yeah, she's a lodger. And but there was a specific moment. So
that's where the term dislodge comes from,
right,
actually. You need to dislodge.
It's when you get your wife
Jessie
out of the lodge. You dislodge her. The specific memory that sticks in my mind is, so Shepard would go to these lessons because you can kind of put the younger kids into these all-day lessons, which is a great way to just forget about your kid. And also get them to actually learn how to ski without biting their heads off personally, because you don't know anything about skiing in my case.
Yeah.
But he would get out of skiing and then we would be able to ski just a little bit before everything closed down for the day. And there was just a moment where me and Locke and Shepard were all kind of skiing, well, trying to get down the mountain. Shepard was falling repeatedly because the lesson was apparently not very effective. But at least in the moment where we were all on our feet and we were all going down the slopes, I was like, this is what I thought being a dad would be. You know what I'm saying? You have those moments where you're like all doing something super awesome on a mountain and you're like, this is being a dad.
Finally.
Yeah, and then your son falls and slides down the mountain and leaves his skis way up high, and you have to somehow get back up this slope, and then like a stranger starts to help him, and then you're like, I don't know how I feel about that, but I do appreciate you helping. And then you're like, I don't like being a dad.
Now you're in it.
That's the balance.
Yeah, that was an honorable mention for me. My kids learning to ski at the January thing, but we didn't follow. We haven't been back since. I got to do that.
You gonna write it on your list? Got to ski again.
Got to ski again. Number 9 for me. I won't spend much time on this because it's very fresh, and I talked about it very recently. But I have reflected on it even more, and it has increased in magnitude since it happened, and we even talked about it on here. And that is at Thanksgiving, when my mom and Lewis were at my dad's side of the family for Thanksgiving. That's a moment that, well, I didn't put it in these specific terms, but this is what I began to appreciate. It was the first time that my mom and dad had been at an event besides, I guess, my high school graduation that I can remember since I was like 2 years old. So in my memory, you know, between high school and then college graduation, and when we would have babies and they would both show up, it was the first time that there was like an elective, we don't have to get together, but we did. And it's gotten even more of a big thing in my mind. So again, I talked about it recently, so I'm just gonna say,
not to ruin
that's
the
my
memory,
number 9.
But they did get together at the barbecue dinner that we did at the Tour of Mythicality.
They in order to experience the event, they both had to be there. It's just like the birth of a child.
It was less intimate.
It wasn't really elective. Like
elective.
Elective. It was
Okay.
the first elective thing that they both showed up at.
You're saying they could have chosen not to come?
Yeah, just like every other year when we have Thanksgiving separate.
Right.
Yeah. Big moment.
Number 8 for me is my solo trip did make my list.
Okay.
I talked about this relatively extensively on the podcast earlier this year, most notably talking about the experience I had in the Yoga Dome.
Oh, I thought you were talking about when you spent 20 minutes in the bathroom.
No,
like every other day.
That's every other day. This is when I went to Avila Beach and we stayed at that weird place with the hot tub.
Yeah.
And that's like they funnel the sulfur water into your room or your deck or whatever.
I wonder if that got affected by the fires.
No, it's not. I mean, it wasn't in any of the. It wasn't in either of the places where there were.
It was
fires.
in between.
Yeah, it's like Central Coast.
Okay, yeah.
What's
if you had to make it a moment? Do you have one?
The specific moment was. So you've got like the hot tub that is on the deck in your room, but then you've got the hillside hot tubs that are on a hillside, and they're basically sort of privatized a little bit. So. You can see down the mountain, but from the path that other people access hot tubs in, they can't see you, so nakedity.
You just said that, yep.
Negativity.
Okay.
Nakedness.
No, let's go with nakedity.
I didn't see any titties. I just want to. I do want to say that.
Well, that is a percussive word, isn't it?
Because
it's like a hi-hat.
I just want to say that mine were out.
Okay,
but
great.
I didn't see any. It just when I started talking about being naked on a hot tub, and then I accidentally put the word titty.
Say it again, brother.
Into nakedity. I went. I combined the word nakedness and nativity, which. There's an idea for Christmas. Sorry.
I bet that exists. Nakedivity.
You could really piss off a small southern town.
I bet
if you combine those two things.
I bet that's the thing. Yeah, do you want my number 8?
But I was saying I didn't even get to my moment. It was
sorry.
It was being
I thought that was quite a moment.
It was being naked in the hot tub on the side of a mountain and kind of looking out. Oh wow.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
My number 8 in April was when my cousin Britton, who I've talked about, came out here for the first time. He was on The Voice. He was just starting to compete, and they holed him up in that hotel, and he couldn't leave.
Yeah.
And of course, it wasn't the first time I've met him, but that was the first. It felt like it because I was like, okay, you're out here doing this thing. I think we met in passing a few times, but in April, that was the first time that we met. I met him at the Denny's for lunch. And I was talking to him about being on The Voice, and it was very early on. He ended up almost winning the whole thing. But it began a friendship and a relationship to where, then every week after The Voice, Christy and the kids, we'd all pile in the car and we'd drive 20 minutes in order to meet him for dinner, and whoever would be in town that was watching him on The Voice, like his mom or his dad or his friends or things like that, we'd all eat dinner together, and then it would be on television at the place where we were eating dinner at the hotel because he wasn't allowed to leave.
Right.
And so it was really cool, like watching The Voice with him just after he had been on it. And it was the start of something that now at this point, starting in January, he's coming to live with us. Because Christian and I ended up encouraging him, hey, if you wanna make it as an artist, as a musician, you've got this album that Alicia Keys has helped you produce and it's about to come out. You gotta capitalize on this. You don't need to be in Sanford, North Carolina. You need to be in Nashville or Los Angeles so live with us and make this thing happen. So that's what's gonna happen in January. We're all super excited. I mean, the kids are getting like an older brother, basically, even though he's about to he'll turn 19 right before he moves in with us. And the living arrangement is gonna be a little interesting because we don't have a guest room, but we have you
have a doghouse.
I'll save that story for later, but we're not gonna put him in the doghouse. But I mean, our personal lives are gonna drastically change because it's like we're adopting a young adult to live with us who's an aspiring musician. And it all started that April. So I'll go back to that moment. Little did any of us know when we were eating, I don't know, what you eat at Denny's, a Super Slam?
No,
That's wrestling.
Grand Slam.
Great.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And
that's my number 7.
As I've stated before, Britton is one of my favorite people now that I've gotten to know him. Potentially the best thing that's ever come out of our friendship is Britton. So
for you.
I'm looking forward to him being here. You mind if I go take a whiz real quick?
Are you serious?
I typically time that a little bit better.
Is that why your eyes are floating? Yeah, get out of here. I'm gonna keep going through my list.
Eyes are floating. I put my drops in, man. I'm trying to keep my
Don't get self-conscious. It's a saying.
Tries to keep my eye. Oh, it's a euphemism for having to peat.
Yeah.
Peat. I gotta get it out. I got some peat moss. I got some peat moss I need to get out. Now here's the option. You can continue on.
I'm not.
Or you can pause it. It's up to you.
I'm gonna pause it. I feel like maybe I should go too. Because we like to sync it up, you know?
Okay.
All right, how you feeling?
Man.
You're back. You didn't miss anything. I just took my jacket off.
I didn't miss anything. But I did piss anything.
Oh gosh. Okay, so what's your number 7? I gave away half of my number 7 already with the tour of Mythicality closer.
My number 7 is the day that me and you, over the summer, went surfing and then went and ate at that restaurant.
Oh yeah.
What's the name of that restaurant?
Gladstones.
Gladstones?
That's
over there on right off the one. And
I was wearing a winter coat.
I don't recall that.
You made fun of me because I had a winter coat in my car and that I was wearing it.
And it was summer. But during that time, during the summer in general, we were kind of more in like a brainstorming phase. So we were coming up with ideas for different things some that we're working on now, some that we decided weren't good enough to work on. But, and this is something we talk about relatively often about finding like unstructured creative time.
Yeah.
And it was one of those times where we got to do something that we really enjoy doing, which is surfing. And then making the decision to just walk into, first of all, that restaurant is really interesting because, and I think it's significantly different now. I don't know, like I think Wolfgang Puck is like buying it or something. I don't know when that's happening. But
for it to become something else like 2 years from now though.
But like people were kind of like dressed up like they were going to a restaurant, but we were like in bathing suits. Of course, you were in a bathing suit and a winter coat, which made you look like maybe you
can get away with anything in this town.
And but we were there for a long time because we didn't. Unlike most of the time, it's like, well, we gotta go surfing, but we gotta get back because we have a meeting or we have this thing that we have to be at because all our time is so structured. To have some unstructured time, that was a good moment. And also, we got really excited about a particular idea. Then we came back and discussed it with Stevie and she pointed out why it wasn't a good idea. No, it was one of those things that like we were excited about certain elements of it and then she was like, well, have you thought about this? And when we thought about that one thing that we're like, yeah, actually that is a problem. And we never solved that problem.
All I'll say.
And so it kind of stalled out.
It's kind of interesting that, well, I'll just say, it was a concept for a Christmas movie. There's no reason not to say it.
Don't say what it was.
I'm not gonna say what it was.
Because I still think there's a way to solve the problem.
But yeah, there's nothing.
Still make it.
Yeah, so we conceptualized a Christmas movie.
We're gonna make a Christmas movie.
And now here we are. It's the holiday season, and maybe we should pick it back up because we're really in the mood, man. I woke up in the middle of the night. I was sleeping on both my arms. They were both dead.
How would you do that?
I don't know.
You have to be on your back. On your stomach to do that.
I know. I don't sleep on my side. I guess I either sleep on my back or I sleep on both my arms at once.
If I woke up and both of my arms were asleep, I would think that that was the end. It was over. My body was failing me.
It's just like a Monday morning to me.
You're shutting down.
But then I looked outside and it was the clearest it's ever been in LA. And then I'm like,
super clear.
I come into work and I'm driving into work, I'm listening to Christmas music, and then I start to feel my arms again. No.
Yeah, don't start driving if you can't feel your arms.
But I'm like, I had a headache when I woke up, both my arms died, but then I was like, I look outside and I put on the Christmas music, and then you know what? It's all good. And I think in that light, we should reassess this Christmas movie. It was the wrong time of year. Right, in a Christmas movie in July.
You were wearing a winter coat. You were trying to help.
I was trying my best. You're
trying to get the Christmas spirit.
That was a good moment. So for me, 7A was the last tour of Mythicality show ever. And then even though it's a totally different time, a month earlier in October, I combine this as a top moment, is that the first Rhett and Link concert at the North Carolina State Fair was my other half of my 7th top moment of the year. Because just like the other one represented something coming to a close, this represented something blossoming, which we've talked about, but it was a lot of fun, and we're going to London in February.
Yeah, and
we're looking to do some other stuff. We're going to Nashville.
Yeah.
After that too. We're going, and we'll see if we can go some other places.
Yeah, the tour, well, since most of
that's my top 7.
Most of the tour for the tour of Mythicality took place in 2017. Obviously, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the trip, the big vacation that we had, which included the tour. I'll just preview that one moment. So the Australia-Fiji trip is higher up on my list.
Of course, but if you're talking about the NC State, were you talking about the NC State concert, or are you talking about?
No, I'm talking about the tour in general.
Okay.
And I kind of I lumped the state fair into the tour. I know it's different, and I know why it's different, and I agree with that, but that didn't make my top 10.
Being different made it a moment for me.
For me, I was sick that trip, and I was like fighting off like my voice going out, and I didn't feel prepared. I wanted us to have more time to like go through the songs and practice, and I didn't have all the lyrics down. I didn't have all the chords down. It was seminal. It was important, but it wasn't a favorite memory of mine because I was stressed out in the midst of it, so I couldn't really enjoy it in the way that I hoped to.
It was semi-seminal?
In the way that I hoped to enjoy it.
Semi-seminal titty?
Okay, yep. I didn't think we had to say titty again there, I said it again. But there was a moment when we were on tour, since you've already shared your tour part, when we were in Australia, and I also, the most sort of, it's that moment where you're talking and the light's on you, where I'm in the dark, so it's similar. It's the time that we have to like process things.
Yeah.
It's the only time you have to process anything in the midst of
the show.
Show. And you've already done a little bit of, there's a little bit of stuff that's happened. We like sang a little song, and then you're kind of getting the vibe of the crowd, and you can kind of see people in the first few rows. And I just remember thinking, we're in Australia, man. Like, this stuff that we're doing has connected with another continent in a way that has gotten people to show up to see it. Yeah. And I just remember thinking it was very special. So that's the tour portion of one of my top memories, which is the trip, which I'm not gonna reveal a number yet because it's higher up.
So are you going with number 6?
I'm going with number 6.
What's your number 6?
Number 6 is breakfast with my boys, which is something that I started to do weekly in 2018.
Okay.
It isn't happening right now for reasons I'll explain in a second. But I was just like, I'm gonna take them, because I don't take them to school. Because I'm gone. I am at the gym or here before it's time to take them to school, and every once in a while I'll do it if there's some, but it's not a regular part of my schedule. I was like, I want there to be some regular thing that we do that like means something. Again, it's just like, you're trying to create those dad moments, you're trying to create those coming down a mountain moments. And I was like, I'm gonna take them to breakfast every Tuesday morning. Oh, I can't remember what day it was. And we did that for half of the year. We We had to stop because once Locke's basketball started, which for some reason started in the summer, he has practice really early in the morning, and then it's like an hour and a half difference from when Shepard needs to be up. And so, but as soon as basketball season is over in February, we're gonna start again and then go through the year until he can't do it again. But it's, again, you kind of want it to be this thing where you're like, you have this thing as a dad, you have this, you have this mindset where you're like, I'm gonna take my kids to this diner and we're going to have breakfast.
It's gonna be like a Norman Rockwell painting.
And I'm gonna talk to them about their day, and I'm gonna give them some fatherly wisdom, and et cetera, et cetera. And all too often, it's sort of just like you're sitting across from a 10-year-old and a teenager, and they're kind of just like, it's the early in the morning and they're just eating. And you're just like, so what do you guys, what's happening today? And they're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and I realize that those are dad moments as well. But the idea of like, well, let me say something that's gonna change your day. It's like, not that I didn't do that on some degree, and I hope that the memory will loom larger in their minds as they get older, and it did make my list.
Yeah, and
because it was very special, and it is special, and it will be again.
I think I totally relate to that. I think as I look through a lot of the photos and all the stuff we did as a family, or even things Christy and I did, it's well, especially with the kids, it's one of those. What I realized, it's about creating an event, or creating, I hate using this term, but it's like, you know what I'm about to say, creating space.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say titty again.
Like we got, you know, I think this is a very, I don't know if it's just in our friend group, but there's a lot of creating space phraseology. But it's perfect for this, because it's like, you don't know exactly what's gonna fill the space, but you've set parameters that like, this is who I'm with for this amount of time. I'm with my kids every Tuesday morning for breakfast, and then within that space, things can happen, because so much of the meaningful things that happen aren't what you plan, it's what happens within the context of that space. So and with parenting specifically, it's the reacting to a moment, like that moment when something goes wrong in one of your kids' lives and you've got to respond to it, or something goes right and you're there to respond to it, you know? And to experience it or help them unpack it. So I think I totally relate to it, that it's important that you create the space that then things can happen, and then a lot of times nothing happens, and you need to have faith that like, we have this moment where when something does happen, I'll be here for it. Or this is a space where we can talk about it and it won't just whoosh, go away, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that those moments will happen and have happened, you know?
Yeah.
Within the context of breakfast.
Yeah.
It's not just about the eggs.
It just isn't as curated as you want it to be.
Right.
Sometimes.
I even find that with vacation, you know? It's like,
it's with everything.
I'll get to that. Let's see, so we're at number 6. My number 6 is in May. We were filming the human chocolate fountain.
Oh goodness! Is it raining in here, or is it just me and the chocolate fountain?
That was a memory for me when you peed it into my mouth.
Which is one of the top episodes of the year. It was an exhilarating moment that within the context of Good Mythical Morning, was one of the best moments. But I'm making it a moment here because if you remember, right afterward, that was the last thing we shot in the studio for the extended 22-minute version of GMM. When you know, launching back in October 2017, it went up into the summer of this year. And then it ended, you know, us doing 3 videos a day.
4 at one point, 5 including more.
Yeah.
Then we went down to 3 plus 1.
And when I look back at our calendar, like I couldn't believe the way how much we worked and shot for the show, how much we were on camera filming. Like it
all day, every day, nonstop.
It monopolized our schedule to a point where like I had forgotten how much. Like we made a decision that like, okay, if this thing doesn't continue, like we're gonna drastically change our schedule and how we work so that it doesn't feel like this anymore. And we've succeeded at that. I am so grateful when I looked back at the first half of our year at the calendar that stopped. I'm so relieved that stopped.
Well,
and it may be, okay, that was an investment. That then
this is my number 2 moment.
It's your number 2 moment.
My number 2 moment is ending the extended version of Good Mythical Morning.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and yeah, I can move it up my list.
You don't have to move it.
I'm not gonna move it, but it's 6 on mine. It's number 2 on yours, but I can totally believe, and I'm not gonna argue with it being number 2 because
it was almost number 1.
It changed.
Jacob's like, me too.
Jacob's number 1. It changed the complexion of our entire lives.
Well, and I know we've talked about this a little bit, and there's confusion about like what that was all about, and I think the general consensus, the sort of nonchalant fan who hasn't really followed the details would just assume you guys decided to change GMM for some reason, probably because you wanted more ad revenue or whatever, and then everybody didn't really respond to it in the way that you would have hoped, and then you decided to stop doing it. That's actually not anywhere close to what the reality is. I've explained this a little bit, but I'll just say it again. It never hurts to put the truth out there. So YouTube approached us and basically said, we've got this new program where we're giving people a bunch of resources to make awesome stuff. And we want Good Mythical Morning to be a part of it. Was a little more complicated than that. They want us to make another kind of show. We were like, we can't, we've got GMM. And then we're like, okay, well, what if we just made GMM even bigger and better? And part of the process was you had to have a bunch of different segments because they're buying the ads for it and that kind of thing. And that's what turned it into the multi-segment version of GMM. Now we were very, very hesitant to do it because we had something that was a very particular way, but it was the kind of thing that the amount of resources, including people and money that would come into our company in order to make this happen is something that we really couldn't say no to. And we were like, surely with putting this much into GMM, we're gonna, just like we talked about before, something's gonna happen. This is gonna shake things up. This is gonna lead to something. And then when it started, it was, like Link said, it was so much work and it was all GMM all the time. And as you know, we like to do other things other than GMM. We got other ideas like a Christmas movie. And we wanna get to those things and we wanna have time for them. And our old schedule of doing 1 video a day did allow for us to do other things. So in the midst of it, while our company had been transformed, we ended up expanding our studio physically. We ended up expanding our staff by a lot, getting a lot of talented people in here. A lot of really incredible things happened. We changed the way we do our production. We became more efficient. And then when YouTube, not us, decided that they didn't want any more of it, we were both like, wow, that is helpful in one sense, because that is going to allow us to go back to the old school version of GMM, which is what most people wanted to begin with. But we don't regret it at all because of what it allowed us to do and how it transformed the way we even shoot the show now. But I will say that moment that we found out that it wasn't happening was this huge just sigh of relief.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
and it transformed the second half of the year.
And like I said, without looking back at the calendar, I tend to forget how much. So it was nice to go back and do that. But I'm saying that the moment was peeing chocolate into your mouth because
oh yeah, that was what I was saying as well.
Because it encapsulates that. I mean, it was us given the opportunity to pour ourselves in, no pun intended, into GMM And then what comes out the other side is
chocolate pea.
Very much beneficial to us. Lesson learned, all the things that infrastructure changes, all of that stuff. But it ended on a high note, a brown liquidy high note.
Yeah, and there were some incredible things created in that stretch.
Wow, so I preempted your number 2, but that's okay. From a producerial standpoint, we're getting to some really meaningful stuff earlier because I ranked them differently on my list.
Right.
Okay, so what is your number 5, I believe?
Number 5, this is the year that I discovered Palm Springs, okay?
Okay.
And I know that sounds weird in one sense, since it's just a town that is east of here, but a couple of things happened. One, took a really awesome trip with my family to Palm Springs. We went there over spring break, and that was where the weird horseback riding story that I told, and the guy who had the dream, and that's just a memory. I saw pictures of that. I was like, that my kids are never gonna forget that. It was just a relaxing weekend with a great experience as a family on horseback. But also some good friends of ours got a place out there, and we spent some time with our close group of friends, and this is sort of representative of what we've talked about before, but like we've made some really good friends that, good friends are tough to find.
Yeah.
You know, good friends are tough to find in Los Angeles, a place that has so many people, but it can be very difficult to carry on friendships and also to have meaningful friendships that aren't shallow and aren't based on trying to leverage something from somebody. So I would say a very large amount of the friendships in this town are strategic, and they're about who you know, so I can then do this thing that I want to do and advance myself. It was very cool to kind of make friends with people who are, many of them are very successful in their own right and have accomplished many different things, but that isn't the dynamic of our friendship and our relationship and our group dynamic at all. It's not about who has done what and who has, how many Instagram followers anybody has. It's like being in a group where, and this is interesting, like once you kind of become a quote public figure, you do question what people's motivations for friendship is.
Yeah.
And to have a group of friends that is not the case at all has been this incredible blessing this year. And when we went to Palm Springs, we were able to basically have a time where we were vulnerable with each other and like basically sitting around kind of like talking about what was happening in our lives. And that was a moment there where just adults being vulnerable with one another and getting into each other's lives is not something that happens very often outside of certain sort of structures. And that was a highlight for me.
I was there for that.
You were.
So it's a highlight for me too. I kind of forgot to put it on my list though.
Whoops.
Sorry, friends. Yeah, okay. So my number 5 is in February and then comes back in June. In February, similar to the you having your breakfast with your boys, we both instituted dad days where it's like once a month taking one kid or more often than that and scheduling, okay, this is gonna be an extended period where we plan something, I plan something just with one of my kids. And I've got many highlights from each dad day with Lily and Lincoln. But this particular one's, the first one I did was with Lando, and we went to an interactive hands-on museum in Pasadena. And it's a highlight because it was the first dad day, I believe. But then there's this thing that you climb up inside, and it's like the kids climb up inside and then it spirals up. And I can't remember if I told you guys about this, but again, it was,
so.
There's not much to it except I went in the thing with him and I was crawling around inside of it and we were having a good time, and he was a little afraid to go up to the top without me going with him. So here I am, an adult inside of this thing, and there are a few adults in it, but it doesn't really accommodate adults that well. And so you're questioning the whole time, am I supposed to be in here? But I did it anyway. And it was just a special moment for us that was like, nothing happened. You know, it wasn't like one of those stories that then it becomes an Ear Biscuit story where it's like, and I got hurt, you know, type of thing. It was just, it turns out that then, again, that was February. In June, I had a dream about that experience. Like, I re-experienced it via dream with Lando. Like, we were back in the thing and it was like, I was able to tap into like the joy of the moment. It was amazing. It was an amazing.
Nothing weird happened in the dream? It was just the same thing? It was reliving a memory?
Yeah.
Weird.
It was weird. And it helped me appreciate that, yeah, that was a very special moment that, again, maybe at the time it was like, yes, the dad day, creating that space, so to speak, or like going to the museum, that was good, but it's like, it actually came down to that moment, like my brain said, okay, I'm gonna dream about this. And it was, so it became even that much more special, and I held on to it, having recalled the memory, that now it's even stronger. So much so that it represents Dad Day, it represents my relationship with Lando, you know, and so yeah, it's a top moment where we're just having a good time in this confined space that kind of smelled like stinky kids.
Yeah, it's like a ball pit at McDonald's.
All right, so now whenever
no matter how much you charge,
right,
if you let kids in there with their shoes off, forget about it.
Yeah, so now whenever I smell stinky kids, I'm catapulted to a positive memory. It's pretty great.
To a positive memory. Okay, my number 4.
I sniff kids' socks.
Oh gosh.
No, I don't.
My number 4 is beginning to work and continuing to work on the thing that we can't talk about.
Right. I didn't put that on the list because it's so frustrating, but it's hard not to put it on the list because it's defining the second half of this year in a lot of ways.
We'll be able to talk about it
creatively.
soon. We'll be able to talk about it soon. I don't know when.
But it's
but let me just describe it at a high level. We're working on something that is pulling on our, why are you deciding to put a tea bag in your mouth right now in this moment?
the end of it.
Well, that's typically not how you finish a tea bag. I know you're transitioning from coffee to tea, but
I've already had my coffee this morning.
Just as somebody,
I didn't mean to distract you. I didn't think you could see me.
Unlike you, I have peripheral vision.
I couldn't see you when I was doing it. I will say that.
Yeah, you're like an ostrich. You didn't think you were seen. We're working on something that's pulling on our common experience, our friendship, and is kind of exploring that in a very new and exciting way that I think is sort of squeezing us creatively as much as we can be squeezed. So that's what I love about it. And I think that there were, kind of making the decision to begin working on it and then kind of the collaborative process that has ensued since we started working on it. Again, it's kind of the thing that we're working on when we're not doing everything else that we're doing. So it's kind of spanned this second half of the year, really probably from the spring until now. And anyway, very excited about it. Very excited about what it means for us creatively. Very excited about what you guys are gonna think about it. And to me, it's been a highlight. Definitely. It was number 4 for me. Number 4? Yeah, number 4. And if we could talk about it, it may be even higher than number 4.
Hopefully in retrospect, it will be successful enough that it will even move up the ranks. Like, oh, because it led to so much, that's an added bonus. But even if that doesn't happen, I think it's important that it's on the list now, but having not realized its potential.
Yeah.
Or failed.
Yeah, it may fail.
My number 4 is a sad one. It's in May, it was the tragic, unexpected death of my uncle, my dad's sister's husband, my Uncle Dan. I'll narrow down to an interesting moment. It was after, the family went home for the funeral, and then we left the funeral, and then one of the things that he always did was he was a big quail hunter, and he had these, he bred and trained, along with my Aunt TC, all these hunting dogs. And then after the funeral, and there was a meal at the church or whatever, and then Aunt TC was telling my kids about, well, I've got a litter of puppies that's just been born, that then we were gonna, it would be the next batch of dogs, and then we were gonna train, and they sell these dogs because of their bloodline.
Yeah. And
their training, how well they're trained. And so we went out to the farm and saw the puppies. And I've got this picture of my Aunt TC with my kids holding these like newborn puppies in the wake of, arguably one of the saddest moments, probably the saddest moment that our family has endured. It was like such an unexpected and terrible shock, and still is in a lot of ways, especially for my aunt and my cousins and those closest to my uncle, their dad or husband. And but it was a very surreal event, and then that was a very surreal moment where it was like there was just my aunt was able to find a little bit of joy in sharing these super cute puppies with my kids. And it was, and we took them out for the first time. She said, let's take them out for the first time into the field, and we're gonna test to see if they're gonna come when I call them, and not just run around everywhere scattershot, and then it's like we're gonna be chasing puppies and maybe losing one. I was actually nervous. She seemed very confident, having done this a lot. And so that whole event we loaded the puppies up in these kennels and took them down in the in her four-wheeler thingy. But as we're loading them up, I look over to the left, and the tractor that my uncle was on when he was in the accident was there. It had overturned, and that's how he had died. Yeah. They had basically turned it back over and brought it up, and it was in storage there in the barn just adjacent to where we were. And like I look over at it, and it was like they were getting the puppy, so I was alone over there with it. And it was a haunting moment, to see the wrecked tractor, and that I was like, oh my gosh, she didn't tell me that it was here. And I was, but what could they, it's not like they could just get rid of it that quickly, I guess. That was a very haunting moment. That then we got the puppies loaded, and we took them down there, and they're running around, and they're successfully following her, and the kids are just laughing. And it was just in the middle of this horrible event, this I'm not gonna be cheesy and try to draw some sort of like the puppies are the beginning of life. I am in no way saying that.
Oh, but you kind of are.
I'm not really. I'm just saying that there's just a moment of joy in that she was able to have with my kids that like was a little bit of relief.
Yeah.
It was also right before he left, it was the last time that I saw my papa before, the next time I saw him, he was on his deathbed when I flew into town. So he was he was there. He was talking to people, he was sitting, he was eating with everybody. It was the last time he was out and about that I saw him before he passed away, just 2 months later. When our family went through a lot this year, and I've shared a lot of that in detail, but I think that's a defining moment and makes my number 4 for the year.
But the moment you had with your papa had to be it. But the fact you talked, I know the way you think. So the fact that you talked about it in a podcast, you didn't put it on your list, but that's obviously on your list.
Yeah, I think, I decided not to put that moment higher because I didn't want to re-talk about it. honestly.
Yeah, I know.
So
that's what I'm
I
saying.
think that's really what it is.
But
It's
in
like,
the
so I
course,
do think there may be a lingering question. It's like, wow, having
no,
heard me talk about it,
I
why is
think-
that not higher?
I think I know what it is.
on my
It's
list.
what you talked about, your tendency to not want to rehash things, but also the fact that you didn't think you were ranking them until you came in here this morning.
Right.
But if I had called you on the weekend and said, I'm ranking mine,
Right.
you would have probably, that one would have been, based on the way you talked about it, it would have been higher.
Yeah. I mean, I'll make it
I'm
number.
saying separately from the moment with the puppies. I'm saying the moment you, like when you shaved your grandfather's face and all that stuff.
Yeah,
That you
I
talked
don't.
about extensively.
Right. I don't think that. Yeah, I think officially I will probably put that at my 0, which is higher than number 1. If I've already
Okay.
made a number 1.
Why
So
don't
I
you-
appreciate you saying that because I think it was just okay. I don't want to really get into it again in
Okay.
detail on the podcast.
Why don't you go ahead, because you took my number 2 already. So I've
Okay.
only got 2 more.
Okay.
So why don't you go ahead and share your number 3?
My number 3 is my birthday and my wife's birthday together. So our 40th birthday party, which again I talked about in here, the bowling. But in going back through it, first of all, we had the big bowling party and we hired someone to take photos, which if you've got a big party that is meaningful to you, I highly recommend getting someone who knows how to take photos and pay. It's worth whatever you want to pay them to get somebody to do that in terms of like preserving those memories. So I was very happy that we did that when I looked back at it. Because I think the main takeaway now, having had all these months since it, was that so many of my friends were there. Basically, all of my friends made it. It's it's a difficult thing to do in LA when it's like,
Yeah.
can everybody show up? And I think that was such a defining, that's what I'm gonna call like the moment, the thing that I appreciate looking back at it. But that was a big moment. And then I'm gonna sneak in another one as part of that, because then that was in May, and then Christy took me to a nice hotel with like a rooftop pool in downtown Los Angeles, and we spent the night there. We had a nice dinner, and but it was my birthday. We were up on this pool, rooftop pool, and I'm looking on social media and seeing all of these birthday wishes from people. And I'm like, this is such a surreal place to be. Like have this ideal moment where Chrissy and I are having, some time just the two of us celebrating my birthday. Bow, chicka, bow, wow.
Oh gosh.
But then there's this added bonus of I've got all these people tweeting at me about how much they want me to have a great birthday. And I was like, wow, that is a grand benefit of being YouTube famous. Is you got a lot of people, probably more than like the ratio standpoint of like fans who wish just normal celebrities a happy birthday. Because there's more of a sense of connection, so you get a much higher quality birthday wishes.
Right.
Which I was listening to some music, reading my birthday compliments, sunbathing with my wife on a rooftop pool. That's a moment.
That reminds me, because I haven't said anything. A lot of these moments, time with my wife is sort of implicit in them, like the family moments. But I had a significant relational moment with my wife in Palm Springs. That was like something that we talk about in terms of like a moment of connection and sort of, when you've been married for 17, 18 years, I guess it'll be 18 in June.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those, like, each other so well, so a lot of those like really pivotal relational moments are things that happen like when you're getting to know each other and like earlier in your marriage.
Yeah.
And then you kind of settle into your marriage and the way that you carry out your relationship, and those sort of like taking your relationship to a new level, those kind of moments become a little bit less, more hard to define. But we had one of those moments this year that was very significant, that's folded into that Palm Springs. I didn't want to forget about that.
Yeah, I think there is a private list that it may not be specifically shared in the way, this is our public list.
Well, yeah.
Unless you want to give more of the details.
I don't want to give the details.
Okay,
I'm just
there you
saying.
go.
So number 3 for me, I went with a very general thing, but I do have some specifics. It was our trip to Australia and Fiji. So
Okay.
I've already talked about the tour aspect of that, but I have 2 moments within that trip. And I think this says something about the way that I see travel, and which you kind of hinted at earlier. That I sort of remember being when I felt the best about these trips.
Yeah.
And that was the first day after we had gotten to the hotel in Melbourne, and we walked across the bridge into the city, and we're just walking through the city. We were gonna go to that restaurant that our friends, Jaden, who's from Australia, from Melbourne, had told us that we should go to. And you're just like walking across this bridge and like walking through town and like taking it all in. And I'm just like this, and my personality is, if it's something new and it's something different, I'm registering all the ways that it's better than anything that I've ever experienced.
I remember you specifically saying,
that's my personality.
look kids, there's a Burger King. You were very
But,
excited.
and it was, it's a little different. Is it called something different? It's called something different, yeah.
It was not called Burger King.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't call it that because there was a guy in Australia who
Yes.
had a burger stand called Burger King, and he won a lawsuit, and they changed the name of Burger King.
Hungry Jacks.
Yep.
Isn't that what it's called?
That was it.
But anyway.
We're not fooled, kids. That's a Burger King.
This
You were very
it says a lot about my personality that
That's my number 1, by the way, the Hungry Jacks.
I'm really, I get very excited about circumstances, and I want everyone around me to enjoy it as much as me. And I start annoying people with like pointing things out and being like, isn't this great?
Right.
I gotta learn to keep that inside. But then it's also the very beginning of the trip.
Yeah.
Because that's inevitably what happens with me. Because the other highlight for me of the trip was something that we've talked about on the podcast before, is when we got on that boat in Fiji and went across the ocean at night, couldn't see anything except the stars, and we got the app out and we're like, looking at the stargazing app and looking at all the stars and the planets and stuff, and it was like the craziest, clearest skies we've ever seen. And then we get to this island and there's no dock, and they just drive the boat to the shore, and we just roll our pants up and just step into the ocean and walk onto this island that we were gonna be staying on. And like there people were singing and like that, again, it was the beginning of the trip. Now the rest of the trip was great, but it was the moment where the expectations are the highest. And I talk about travel expectations and how you should lower them so you can have a great time, but in the moment I cannot get away from it, and I let it take me over. And it was just this like, this was such a good choice. This was such a good idea.
Yeah.
And that was a very significant moment for me.
Yeah, that was an amazing trip. I mean, the fact that we were able to take our tour over there, as you've already mentioned, and we did those 3 dates. They were all very special, and then we capped it off with the Fiji thing. I mean, that is my number 1. Okay? So you have hit my number 1.
Good.
And
gotcha.
And it's that entire trip, and it's so hard. All of those moments are spectacular that you've talked about, and there's so many more. I'll just shout out another one, which is when we went on the day trip. You actually weren't there. The day trip outside of Sydney, and Lando
my son was sick.
We get off. We're like taking some pictures. This amazing overlook, and Lando's like, "Dad, how do you take a selfie?" And I'm like, "Well, son, you just take the phone and then you hit that button so it turns around this way so you can see yourself, and then you just take it." And I'm giving it to him while he does it, and like Lando takes his first selfie. So that's not the number 1 moment of the year, but it's a moment that encapsulates the type of things that you want to happen. It's like, I ushered in my son's first selfie on an overlook in Australia.
Now, it's funny that Lando's hesitancy to take pictures, let pictures be taken of himself, led to him being 8 or however old he is before he took.
Yes.
I got selfies of like non-talking Lock and Shepherd, like just like picking up the camera and
because he refused
just
to have his
taking pictures
picture
of themselves.
taken. He wanted to be a ghost. Now he welcomes pictures being taken of him. I mean, again, that's another
a good
facet.
quality.
Another facet of that memory is that he's changed and developed, you know, in terms of his self-confidence. That like there's all these things wrapped up into this goofy selfie that he took, you know, where he's like he's got that funny selfie look on his face. So yeah, that whole thing, that whole trip is my number one, and it was just, man, we've carved out time in 2019 for us to have extended vacations, and we're kind of earmarking some of that time and trying to figure it out. So it actually led to that, like, okay, we can, let's go big.
Well,
you know,
I think
carve
that,
out some time. So it create more.
It
of
shows
those.
you that. I mean, first of all, one of the great things about travel is because it shakes up your normal routine. It tends to be the thing that you remember when you look back, because it broke you out of your day to day.
Right. I even heard someone say, man, this was on a podcast. I'm sorry, I cannot remember who said it, but it was great advice. That someone's dad said, giving financial advice, that there's only a few things you should go into debt for, but one of those should be vacation. It's like, you can justify going into debt for a family vacation, which, yeah, the eyebrows raise a little bit, right? But it's like,
that's a provocative thing to say.
It is.
And that's why I said it. But the thing that I have thought about this year is, you know, when I think about what I'm spending my money on.
It wasn't the only, there was another thing.
I have thought that, like, this feels, if we're paying for a trip, if we're paying to I've got some exciting stuff I'll talk about later because it's not happening anytime soon. But paying for travel, in my mind, is I'm not gonna go into debt for it, but it's justified. I'm like, you look at the price tag, but you're like, yeah, but I'm creating this memory. So yeah, I think it's definitely justified.
So that's my number one, is that entire trip.
Okay, well, you've already hit my number two, which was ending GMM 22.
I've not looked at your number one, so I don't know what it is, but I can share my number two, and we can hear your number one.
Okay.
My number two is the RV trip we took. I mean, once we got out of our own driveway, it's just like, which I detailed how dramatically difficult that was. You know, we went to the Grand Canyon, we did the RV thing, confined space, the dogs included. I'm so glad we did that. Like, I did it just because it seemed almost a little crazy for us to do it. And again, I think you should do it. I think you should do the RV thing.
I gotta go sleep. I gotta go try to sleep on one.
But we're driving back, and we're like headed to those caverns that I told you about, and we're on, instead of taking the main interstate highway, we went off on Route 66, and it felt like, you know, it's like stuck in time, or however you say the phrase.
Frozen in time?
Frozen in time. And
it's gotta be another Disney reference.
But the kid,
if you're talking about Route 66.
But I mean, the kids were sleeping in the back of the RV, and we were driving through this like amazing Route 66 scene from Cars, and Chrissy and I are just kind of talking about, it was just a special moment for us, just kind of talking about how we are experiencing life with these people that we love so much that came out of her loins.
Oh gosh.
And it was just very cool, laid back moment of just driving on the open road where you feel like you could see for hundreds of miles, either direction in the prairie. And I just remember that moment where nothing was happening. And it was the time of reflection on like the tail end of our trip. It's like, we did a good thing. So
yeah.
that's my number two.
And you're like, my kids will appreciate this when they're older.
Hopefully,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
because you, as a kid, you don't. It's very difficult to take it in and appreciate it. When you get older, when you have kids, and life begins to move very, very quickly. You're trying to create these experiences. You say the kids are only going to be with us for this much longer, and you're trying to create those memories that they'll look back and they'll be like, I did have a good childhood. My parents did love me. That when they're gonna really need it later in life. But in the moment, I think they're just kind of thinking, whoa, when can I get home so I can get my room?
Yeah, yeah. All right, so I don't know what your number one is. Better be good.
Well, my number one is therapy.
Is that it?
Yeah. Now, therapy for me did not start in 2018. It started very, very tail end of 2017.
Okay.
I've talked about it a little bit. But the thing, I mean, again, I'm self-conscious anytime I talk about it because I feel like it's one of those really LA things to talk about, and I know that we're out here in LA in this bubble, and you can kind of forget what it feels like to not be here.
Yeah.
But interestingly, I would say that again, it's kind of very similar to what I was talking about earlier. That you change so significantly, so quickly when you're growing up, and you're going through. You think about how quickly our children are changing as they grow up, and like we haven't changed that much, right? You change in these dramatic ways, both physically, but your brain is changing, and then the way you see the world is changing, and then even in your during your college time in your 20s, you're experiencing these like just changes, in your even in your personality, not fundamentally your personality, but just different aspects. And I kind of feel like in a lot of ways, up until I started kind of exploring these things with the help of a professional, that I kind of just assumed I was going to kind of just be me. You just be the same guy for the rest of your life. I'm like, I'm pretty healthy in general. I mean, I originally went to therapy not because I thought that there was something wrong with me in terms of like the way that I see myself or think about myself. I went because of the stress what stress was doing to me. Mm-hmm. The fact that I kind of let stress affect me to the point that it was affecting me physically. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I just need somebody to help me deal with this. I got help with that, but I think that the breakthrough for me, or the beginning of a breakthrough, is when I started beginning to understand why I am the way that I am, like why my personality is the way that I am, the way that it is, why I'm so independent, and why I can cry while watching a commercial.
The Lion King trailer.
Like literally I started watching, first of all, if you're not watching Dogs on Netflix, I don't know what you're doing. You should watch Dogs on Netflix. It's a documentary series where they profile a different dog and human relationship in every one. And I literally, the first episode, started crying during the opening credits. And then I just cry the whole time every episode.
Is that when they're sacrificing cats, like when the opening credits?
Well, and speaking of cats, let me just say right now, you could not make this documentary about cats, okay?
Hold on, we're talking about your therapy. Let's get back to you.
You couldn't make it.
Don't deflect into the world of cat hate.
That
was my fault.
I challenge you to make a documentary about the bond between cats and people and all the wonderful things watch Dogs and then tell me that they could do the same thing with cats. They couldn't.
Unless you're about to cry, let's bring it back to you.
I'm in therapy for this, for my cat hatred. But it's interesting because I cry really easily at certain things like that. But then if you ask me things about, and I had a great childhood. I didn't experience like trauma. And but like if you ask me about things that like the most difficult things that I experienced growing up or whatever, I won't cry. I don't have sadness about those things. But I can tell a story about them and make somebody else cry. But yet, so I started learning that like your emotions have to come out in some way. And so for me, I had found this way to kind of deal with them by like, I'm gonna watch this documentary about dogs, but yet not deal with what's going on inside and kind of it's more locked up. That's just kind of the surface level talking about it. But anyway, therapy has been significant for me because it represents sort of the beginning of sort of a second journey in my life of kind of going inside and figuring some things out. I feel like I'm at the very beginning of that, and there's a lot of work. You hear people talking about the work that they're doing, and then you start figuring out like, oh, I need to be working on myself in this way. And it's not just about some of the more obvious things which we've both been doing, which is like getting our schedule in order and making sure that we've got things for the kids, which some of that has been really assisted by therapy, but they're like, what is it about me? How can I continue to grow? And then how does that then affect the relationships that I have? How does that affect what kind of father I am, and what kind of husband I am, what kind of friend I am? So that's number one. No specific moment. I won't talk about like a moment in therapy in which I had like a breakthrough. I'll keep that
your private list
between me and my therapist, but therapy as a whole.
We will be posting our private list on our Instagram.
Right. Uh-huh.
Is that how I'm gonna get back on it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, well, thanks for that level of vulnerability in your number one. Yeah, and I think, well, there you have it. That's our top 10 moments of 2018 that I'm so glad that we went back through them for our own benefit.
Yes.
I mean, at least to reflect and come up with them, so that we could share them.
No, it was a good exercise to like, you start thinking like, wow, I actually did some stuff this year. I kind of thought that I didn't.
And I'm trying to put together, now I went through the photos, I think I'm gonna put together a book. I think I'm gonna do that this year.
You can get AI to do that.
Well, now that I made an album that's just of moments, and now I can get the AI to take it. It's not gonna take it from like a million pictures from 2018. It's gonna take it from an album of 100 pictures.
Get the AI to caption all the pictures with fun thoughts.
Okay. Make copies for my relatives.
Yeah, so that's it. That's Ear Biscuits for 2018. Again, reminder that we'll be back January 7th. And then all the video versions of the podcast will be over at the youtube.com/earbiscuits brand new channel, which you can subscribe to right now. And we hope you've enjoyed this year of Ear Biscuits. We changed things a little bit. As you know, we're always changing, We're always tweaking. And the way we tweaked Ear Biscuits this year was to make it just about the two of us. No, we decided to, instead of focusing on bringing people in to interview, is like, well, there's two of us, we can always talk about something, and let's sort of have our friendship on display as part of this podcast, both exploring some of our common experiences, but then exploring questions together. I've enjoyed it. Personally, I enjoy this a whole lot more than I enjoyed when we have to figure out fancy questions to ask people. That's just me personally.
Well, and that wasn't last year, that was many years ago.
Yeah, I know, but we still flirted with that a little bit, and then we've kind of experimented with what the format was gonna be. And anyway, let us know what you think about where this is kind of settled out. We're obviously still always tweaking, and anything that you would like to see in 2019.
Hashtag Ear Biscuits.
Anything you would not like to see in 2019. If you want it just to be me now.
And we wish you.
We could do that
I'm
as well.
ignoring that. We wish you happy holidays, and may your years always come to a close.
With your clothes on.
Or actually not.
May your years always come to a close without clothes. Happy New Year.
Or not. To watch more Ear Biscuits, click on the playlist on the right.
To watch the previous episode of Ear Biscuits, click on the playlist to the left.
And don't forget to click on the circular icon to subscribe.
If you prefer to listen to this podcast, it's available on all your favorite podcast platforms. Thanks for being your mythical best.